Hello everybody, this is the Craft House Magic podcast and we're on episode 44. So welcome, my name's Ellie and I'm coming to you from Norwich in Norfolk in the UK, and today I'm going to talk about all the crafty things I've been up to in the last couple of weeks. So today is Thursday the 12th of July. And it's been quite warm in the UK, but I've still managed to get quite a lot of knitting done, so that's lovely. I'm going to talk about some of the knitting I've been up to, some sewing, and it's going to be dressmaking this time. As always lately, I'm just obsessed with it. And then I've got a bit of bobbin lace to show you, and then the usual confessions and blasts from the past, and gadget. And then I'm going to talk about one of the Ask Me Anything questions I've had on the Ravelry group. So just a bit of administration. You can find me on Instagram and Ravelry and Facebook, etc. as Craft House Magic, and I'll pop the links down below so you can find me there. We've got a couple of knit alongs going on at the Ravelry group at the moment, and we've got the Christmas craft along, which I'm drawing a couple of prizes for at the end of every month. You don't have to actually finish anything, it's just being involved in the chatter which gives you the entries. So the more you enter, the more chances you'll have of winning. I've drawn the prizes for June now, and I've posted those on the thread, and I'll draw the prizes for July at the end of July or beginning of August probably, and that's going to be a lovely shawl design from Jen Sheelan, and it's called the Springtime Melody pattern, and I'll pop a picture up here. And it's a really pretty triangular shawl. You'll be able to see by looking at the picture a little bit better, but she's used two colours and that's really pretty. And the second of the prizes, I'm going to actually contribute a skein of my yarn of your choice, so you don't end up with colours that you perhaps don't normally knit with or just don't fancy knitting with. And we've also got the Buttercup sock along going on at the Ravelry group at the moment, which is all to do with the kits that me and Kelly from Lay Family Yarns had put together. So you can see what people are knitting in that group. And I'm also doing some sock tutorials here on YouTube as well. So I've just published part 2 last week, which showed the sort of heel flap and gusset and the decreases on the foot of a top-down sock. Next week I'll be publishing part 3, which will be the toe decreases and the Kitchener stitch at the end. And then I'm thinking about doing another Cozy Memories blanket tutorial after that. So just to keep you updated, let's get on to the nitty goodness. So I've got a finished object, and these are my button jar socks. So this was the yarn that Kelly from Lay Family Yarns dyed up, and it's a beautiful blend of these different colours that went with the bag that I'd made. And it did come with a mini, but I got so carried away that I ended up doing the heel flap in the same colour as the rest of the sock. So that little mini will have to go in my Cozy Memories blanket. So there we are, this is how they look. I didn't want to just do the toe in the contrast colour without doing at least some of the cuff or the heel in it, so I did the whole pair of socks in the one yarn, and I think that's come up lovely. And I do like how when you've got sort of these micro stripes, how the heel comes up as well. I think that's really pretty. So there we are, we've got a pair ready for the cooler weather. So those are for me. So let's talk about my works in progress. What have I got on the needles at the moment? So these are the socks that I've been knitting for the top-down sock tutorial, and this is the Coming Around Again colourway, which is named after the Carly Simon song from the 80s. And it's got this gorgeous coral colour with little bits of grey and like a pale blue there, and I've used a coral mini to contrast with the little bits of coral there. I think that brings it out nicely. So this actually is I dye separately. You can buy full skeins of out of my shop, and this is Nobody Does It Better, and that's also by Carly Simon because I wanted to link them together. So there we are. This is my sparkle base, but I don't know if you can really see on camera how sparkly it is, but if you look at it in real life, it's just really pretty and glittery. And I'm using obviously my top-down sock pattern because that's what I'm knitting on the video with. So there we go. I'm right down to the toe, and I'm ready to do the toe decreases in the next video next week. So there we go. I'm ready to go. So that's my first work in progress. I've also been working on another pair of socks. But this is a really exciting pair of socks because I've been dyeing up some special yarn for this little kit that I'm going to be doing. But you will be able to buy the yarn separately if you want to, just because sometimes you've got enough bags. So I'll show you the yarn in the skein first. So this yarn is called Over the Rainbow, and it's named after the song Over the Rainbow. Now let's see if I can pronounce this guy's name. So there was a version of Over the Rainbow by Real Kamakawino Ole. That's not a very good pronunciation, but never mind. But it's the one, the really sort of melodic version of Over the Rainbow from 1990, which I thought was lovely. So this is the yarn that I've dyed up specially for it. And I've dyed up some little minis, and this is supposed to represent sort of cloudy sky as a contrast colour. So I've caked these up and started knitting with them. So this is how the yarn looks caked up with all the colours all together. It's really pretty. I love these colours. That's the little mini, and this is how it's going to look when it's knitted up as a sock. So we've got these blue micro stripes with a rainbow dispersed within them, and I've dyed it so that their pooling is sort of in a spiral all the way around quite evenly, so you can see the different colours in there. I think you can see that's quite an accurate representation, apart from the pink is perhaps a little bit pinker, not so muted. And there's the little cloud yarn for the contrast heel that I've put together. So I've just started on I've picked up stitches around the heel flap and I've started doing the decreases. And again, the pattern I'm using is my top-down sock, which I showed in my tutorial, which I mentioned in the last pair of socks. So there we go. So I'm going to be doing, like I said, I'm going to be doing these, you can buy the yarn separately, but I have made a little bag to go with it. So here we are, here's the bag that I've made with these little ribbon stripes across the front with the colours that coordinate with the yarn. And then I think you'll be able to see better on this flat one. On the back I've embroidered Craft House Magic with free motion quilting or free motion stitchery, and then I've done some thread painting in a rainbow just on the back there, and I think it's quite a nice simple representation of a sort of rainbow, and it's all pink inside. So this one here, the one I've got stuff in already, is the one for me. I have to keep one for myself, don't I? I'm naughty. And the inside is a nice pink. Now this is muting that out a bit on the photograph, but I'll put a photo on the screen as well. And there's two nice big pockets. Like the button bag, I've also, because there's these pockets on the back, you could put pins on the back of the bag as well. And that's a nice drawstring. And you can get a couple of 100 grams of yarn in there for a sock project with a contrast yarn, which is handy. And to be honest, I could probably get about 300 grams in there if you squish it in. So there we go. I'm doing this little kit, and I will be bringing out the pre-orders on Friday, and they'll all be shipped out by the middle of next week. But they'll also come with some progress keepers. And I've actually started using some on my sock. So I've got a cute little sun and some sunglasses, because you can't have a sun without a pair of sunglasses, and then a little cloud, because you can't have a rainbow without a sort of partially cloudy sky, and I think that's really cute. So there'll be those three progress keepers, the bag and the yarn and the mini skein, so you'll get those in the kit together, and also a couple of other bits and bobs, which are a little surprise. So they'll be available tomorrow, which is the 13th of July at 7 PM British Summer Time. I have made up some kits already, but I have stuck them as pre-orders because a few of them I won't have made up, just to make sure that I don't overmake for how many people want the kits. So I thought you might like to see how it knitted up, so I wanted to knit some before I put them on sale, but I think that's really pretty. I'm loving this. I've had this idea in my head for a while, and the song Over the Rainbow, I keep getting it in my head, and it's such a lovely pretty summery song, so I thought it's a perfect time of year to bring it out. So there we go. I've actually integrated shop update in the middle of my works in progress. Sorry guys, I hope that it's not bored you too much. So I've also been working on my Cozy Memories blanket. Now this is how I've got on so far. I should show it to you actually when it's folded up, because I just love it folded up. And it's actually a nice big rectangle at the moment. So it's all nice and neat, and I've got all the tags on the back so I know what to tell you what I've knitted with. So since the last podcast I've done about 7 squares, I think. I've got this one, which is Yarny Love in the Blue Speckles colourway. This is one from lovely Kelly from Lay Family Yarns. This one here is Fondant Fibre in the By the Light of the Silvery Moon colourway. There's another one by Kelly from Lay Family Yarn. This one is Nora George Yarns in the Moaning Myrtle colourway. I like that. The grey always goes so nicely with pinks and purples. I've got another Lay Family Yarn mini skein. And the ones all from Lay Family Yarn were in last year's advent calendar for Christmas that I purchased. And this is a Nora George and a touch of Hermione, and I think that this was custom dyed for my friend Naomi. Hi Naomi! And there's another Kelly Lay yarn from Lay Family Yarns on the end there. So I'm pleased that I've finished a whole line, because it looks so much nicer when you can actually fold it in a nice rectangle. So I'm hoping to get a few more squares done by the next episode, because I neglected it for a little while. So I've got, I should have shown you just now, you can see how all my squares from here that way are all going in this direction, with the centre point going in that direction, and then I've switched it into, like, I'm doing a chevron shape with these 2 rows going in that direction. So I'm going to do a few more rows going in the same direction, and then I'm going to switch going to that direction again, so that we've got a chevron. But I'm thinking of doing as many rows as I have here in that direction, in the same direction as these 2, if that makes sense. I'm babbling. Sorry guys. I do, even though it's really hot, I've been knitting on my blanket. It's ridiculous, isn't it? Oh dear. And finally, I've got another work in progress. This might be a new cast on. So I've cast on the Madewell cardigan. So I did a little swatch, and the yarn I'm using is my You Spin Me Round colourway in my merino nylon base, and I've washed and sort of laid this flat to dry just to see what my gauge was correctly. I found that the needles that were suggested in the pattern for me were coming up a bit not wide enough, but then I switched to 4mm needles and I had the right gauge. And even though I quite liked this tighter gauge, I decided to go with the more open gauge, just because I needed to go with the largest size then, and if I went with the tighter gauge I'd have had to do loads of calculations, and I just was desperately wanting to cast them on. So I thought, I'm just going to cast it on, even though it's slightly looser than perhaps this tighter gauge might have lasted longer, I suppose, but I just thought I need to cast it on now. I don't want to do any thinking, I just want to read the pattern. So this is how it's coming along. There's some increases, so I've cast on sort of round the neck there, and I'm increasing on the shoulders, and I'm not alternating skeins just yet, so I'm just while I'm doing the increases I'm just staying with one skein, because I think because it's quite a dispersed yarn I can alternate skeins when I get further down the body. So there we are. That's my cardigan I've knot on the needles, and I've been really enjoying this, because even though it's a garment it's actually quite simple to knit, so I'm really looking forward to seeing that grow. That'll be exciting. So that's my knitting for this time, and I've got a little bit of sewing. So I've been busy over the last couple of weeks finishing off some of the projects that I'd cut out, because I'd got way too many cut out and not finished in terms of dressmaking. So let's get Barbara in, shall we? Come on, Barbara, come and show me what you got on. Oh, Barbara, you're looking posh today. I like this lace. So Barbara's wearing my Springfield top. So I've made a couple of these and they're quite a nice, easy pattern. The pattern is by a company called Cashmerette, and they are an American company that actually provide different sort of cup sizes or bust sizes for the lady who's got a larger bust. So I actually picked the largest of the bust sizes. I think it's G to H or something. I can't remember, but the American terms for bra sizes are slightly different to the UK. So I did measure myself and make sure I'd got the right one. And as I've made 2 of these already, I knew that this size fitted me. So this is a cotton poplin fabric that I picked up from Hemel Hempstead from a shop called Needlecraft when we went up for our anniversary a few months ago. And I couldn't resist this gorgeous pink floral. It's blowing out a little bit. Let's pull you forward, Barbara. Don't fall over, will you? Got lots of fabric on the floor in front of me, ready to show you. There we go. So, you can probably see the print a little bit better there. So it's a really pretty floral print. And I decided that I'd actually got this gorgeous lace in my stash, which I picked up from the Knitted and Stitching show, from a store where they had just loads of laces. And this isn't a stretchy lace at all. And I'd been using a lot of my laces for making underwear, but because this isn't stretchy, I thought it might be nice to stitch it to a garment like that didn't need to stretch at all. So it's perfect to stitch onto this poplin. So I placed the lace right sides together like this, all the way round, and I top stitched. And then I took my scissors, my applique scissors with a duck bill on, and carefully snipped away the excess fabric, so I literally had a couple of millimetres left. And then I finger pressed the lace downwards because I was scared of ironing it too much. And then I top stitched a couple of millimetres from the edge just to secure it. So there's literally 2 rows of stitch in there to keep it secured to the garment, but actually it looks nice and neat and only a tiny little area, and I'm really pleased how that came out. I did think that perhaps I should try and follow the pattern in the lace so that it was attached zigzag, but I thought might be a bit too much, and I quite like the look of this what do you call it, tulle, the tulle part of the lace, and you can actually see the pattern of the fabric coming through a little bit better from where the dense lace part is, and I think that's really sweet. I haven't worn it yet, and it could probably do with a bit more of a press. So there we are. That's the first of my finished objects. I should probably show the back, and it's just the lace goes all the way around. This Springfield top has a panel across the back here. Because I was a little bit short on fabric, I ended up actually splitting this into 2 of these pieces and joining 2 pieces for this part so that I had enough fabric. But I'm not too bothered about that. I didn't bother pattern matching it because I really didn't have enough fabric. I had 1 metre to make this pattern, but I didn't realise that the fabric was a narrower fabric than it was in the fabric requirements. But I managed to squeeze it out, so that's good. I actually used French seams on this, so it's all nice and neat on the inside. I do like doing a French seam, it just feels special. I finished off the neckline with some bias binding that's like a silky material, just to finish off the insides there, because I didn't have enough of the fabric to cut bias binding strips with in this poplin. So there we are. I shall get on to the next outfit. Barbara, would you do the honours? Welcome back, Barbara. So this fabric is from a shop called Fabric Styles, and this is a scuba fabric, which I'm not quite sure about. I've never actually made something and worn something in this material. So once the weather gets cooler, I shall be wearing this, and I'll get back to you on how scuba wears in sort of a long sleeved form. I thought that this would be a nice sort of wacky print to wear to be quite cheerful in the autumn sort of months and winter months. But I'm not quite sure whether I'm in love with it anymore. We'll see. I'll have to see how I get on when I actually come to wearing it. So the pattern is the Cocoa Top by Tilly and the Buttons, and I've made so many of these. Absolutely love this pattern. It's the version with the rolled cuffs at the end of the 3/4 length sleeves. I think there's a longer length sleeve and you don't have to add the cuffs, so you've got different options there. Normally with the Cocoa, you're supposed to just fold over the neck and top stitch it down, but what I decided to do is actually draft my own neckband. So what I did is I took my tape measure and I measured around the neck once I'd cut the pieces out, and taken into account the seam allowances, and then I calculated what the length of it would be minus 10%. So I cut this long strip, joined the the shorter ends together, so you ended up with a loop, folded it together, and then I basically just stitched it to the top here, folded it up, and then top stitched it down. And I've tried it on and it seems to fit so far. So I'll have to show you in the next episode how the neck lies on me. It's a little bit hot at the moment to put this on, so hopefully it'll be cooler on the next episode. So there we go. So I know that I like the shape of this top anyway. The Cocoa fits me really well. I'd made adjustments when I made the first one and made it so that it was really comfortable and tends to work with a fabric that isn't particularly stretchy, so that I know I'd be safe with this one. One thing I did notice with this Fabric Styles fabric, the stripes, I should have actually cut the pieces out in the opposite direction, so the stripes should be going down this way. But because the Cocoa doesn't need too much stretch, and actually it stretches both ways, I could get away with putting the stripes this way. I didn't want the stripes to be going downwards. I don't know if I fancied it, so I just cut it out the way I wanted to, and I thought, well, I'll just see how it turns out. And there's still quite a bit of stretch this way anyway. If there wasn't any stretch that way, I'd be concerned about cutting it out in that direction. But I thought that it would look a bit odd if I had the stripes going that way. We'll see. We'll see how much I wear it. It's not really the time of year to be making one of these tops because it's way too warm. But I'm pleased I had a go at changing the neckline though, and I think that lies quite nicely. At least on Barbara it does. We'll see how it looks on me. So thank you, Barbara. Bye, Barbara. I also have a third bit of dressmaking. So I made up some ultimate trousers, which are from the Sew Over It pattern. And I made some adjustments as I was going to get them to fit me nicely. Oh God, that's a bit depressing, isn't it, the width of that? We'll fold them over, that's better. So I pinned them and made sure that the legs fit me nicely. Then actually I realised that the sort of sides were a bit baggy. I don't know if this is going to make sense without me sort of putting them on. So this is the front of the trousers. And I found that the distance from the crotch to the waistband was perfect. But at the side here, because I think my tummy's bigger than my hips, which is quite depressing, I found that this side seam was too long. So what I did is I took the pattern, and the pattern actually has a line for the crotch over here, just showing where the crotch is. So I cut from almost the edge of this pattern piece right to the side so that I had a pivot point here, and I reduced the actual length of the seam by a couple of inches because that's how much excess I had. I could pinch at the sides a little bit of excess, so that I kept the seam on this side the same but reduced it on this side, and then blended the two edges together nicely. So I'm going to make another version of the ultimate trousers, and just to get them to fit properly. So these were just basically a wearable muslin, and this fabric is the most awful fabric you can imagine, and you can't really see how awful it is on the camera. It looks quite normal on the camera, and it's got a weird shine to it, and I don't think I'd leave the house in it. But it's good that I've made good use of it to make a muslin, because there is no way that I'd been able to just cut this pattern out and use it straight away. It wouldn't be a very good wearable muslin because they look a bit ridiculous. And actually taking out that space on the side seam would if I just took it out a piece across here, you'd have like a weird dart across the side. So I think, well, I'm glad I made the twirl just because I can get a good fit, and I'm hoping the next pair I'm going to make a pair of sort of 3/4 length shorts for the summer, because I'm really short on summery things. I really want to make some short sleeve t-shirts as well, because I've made so many long sleeve and it's just too hot, so I'm having to wear lots of ready to wear things like this one. So that's my dressmaking for today. Hopefully I've told you all the details that I wanted to. Yeah, I think I've covered all the pattern names and everything. Hopefully if I have missed them out, I'll have put them on the screen for you instead. So now we're on to bobbin lace section. I haven't showed you this in a while, just because I was being a bit slow, to be honest. So I've been making something Christmassy. So this pattern, it's called a Christmas bangle, but it's basically a decoration to put on the Christmas tree. Let's see if I can get closer to the camera. I have taken some of the pins out so that you can see it a little bit. There's a metal bangle in the centre, and you're doing bobbin lace which is attached to the metal bangle, which will then stick out, and you can hang this on the Christmas tree, or well, on the wall I suppose anyway. So there we go, that's how I'm getting on at the moment. So the thread that I'm using is a DMC size 80, and these little balls you can get in a lovely, I love this red, it's so pretty. And I quite like this piece because there's not too many pairs that you have to have hanging of bobbins on the side, and I've just used my stitch keeper to hold them together so they don't come out of order, because if they went out of order it'd just take me ages to put them in the right order, so we don't want that to happen. You can see that there's some white threads just hanging off the beginning of the piece, and this just means that when I work all the way around to the other side, when I'm sewing in my ends, I can use these white threads to pull them through, so that it's easier than pulling them through on their own, because I use a very small a very small crochet hook to do so, like a 0.6mm, and that can be a little bit fiddly, but with the thread there it's so much easier. So the pattern's by Christine Springett, and you can see actually that her patterns, they come, she actually does, on her printout there's a pricking separate from a diagram of the working diagram, which is nice, and then you just mount it on some cardboard with some of this blue sticky. I'm hoping to get some little simple tutorials on bobbin lace done before the end of the year. I keep thinking of other things that I need to do first, but there we go, that's my Christmas decoration that I've been working on. So that's my sort of entry to the Christmas craft along that I'm doing. So there we go, I think that's all the things I've been making at the moment, and I thought I'd go on to Blast from the Past. Now, moving on from the last episode, I showed you some cross stitch that I got when I was, well, I was about 7 I think. I found this bag that I made when I was, I think I must have been first year senior school, which makes me about 11 this time. So I made a patchwork bag with little cords to go over your shoulder, and then it's drawstring at the top. And I actually am really surprised to see that I've overlocked the seams on the inside. I can't remember doing that at all. And it's, if you look closely, look at the matching there, and the fact that I've not got alternating squares like I have on the rest of the bag is pretty awful, but I thought that was quite fun finding that out. I've been using this bag to put all my scraps of jersey fabric that I've been collecting, and it's got a little round bottom, but if you look closely it's the most awful sewing you've ever seen in your life, but I think it was just a sort of practice piece. I think that this was towards my GCSEs or something ridiculous like that, so there we go. That's my little bag. You can tell that I've always been a fan of blue. I think I might actually make something like this to use for a knitting bag. That would be quite cool. I like a little rucksack type of thing. I remember that this sort of style in bag used to be really in when I was at school. Everybody used to have Benetton versions of this shape, and that's why I've obviously wanted to copy it in a patchwork bag. So there we are, that's my blast from the past. Right, now I've got my gadget, and I thought I'd talk about stitch markers and progress keepers. So I thought I'd just explain what the difference is. Now I find both of these really, really useful. So a progress keeper is basically something that you can hook into your stitches in your work that you've already knitted. It can be a little lobster clasp like this one, or it can be one of those earring backs, which I have one here, like this, but it hooks into your knitting. And you can also use these as stitch markers, which are on your needle. So stitch markers are something that you pop on your needle like this as you're knitting to mark between stitches. But the lobster clasp or loop of some kind needs to be able to go over your needle. A stitch marker is only got like a loop like this, which will go onto your needle, which you can't get off unless you knit up to it, if that makes sense. So stitch markers tend to go on your needle, progress keepers you hook into your work, but you can use some progress keepers as stitch markers as well. I know that the lobster clasps I use for my progress keepers go on to 2.75mm needles, so they can work as that. So there we are, that's my gadget for this week. I always love especially progress keepers, because I can really see how much work I've done on what the beginning of a row. So we've got some confessions. I've not been too bad, and these projects I've bought for projects that I know that I'm going to do. So talking about the ultimate trousers that I showed you, the pattern that I'd done a muslin in, I bought some stretch cotton twill. I don't know if you can see the weave in this. It's a twill fabric anyway, it's quite a fine weave, but these are stretchy, so this has got a bit of stretch in it because I like trousers to have a bit of stretching. So I've bought a couple of meters of this brown twill stretch cotton fabric, and these are from Minerva Crafts, so I've bought that. It was, I think it was about £5 I think for a metre, so that it's a bargain. So even if my second sort of muslin doesn't fit properly, then I know that I haven't spent too much money on the fabric. And I also ordered this fabric from Minerva Crafts because I thought if I'm going to order one thing, I may as well order two. So I've picked up this chambray. So this is a lightweight cotton. Excuse for the creases. I've stuck them in the wash so that they're ready to use, but I haven't given them a press yet. So this is a nice, quite a lightweight chambray here, and I thought that I'd made the Mietta skirt by Tilly and the Buttons because I thought that that would be a nice sort of summery skirt to make. So I shall hopefully get something, at least the pattern traced out before the next episode, hopefully. Although I do need to do some bra making, because on my Make 9, bra making was next. And it's a little bit scary to start something new, you know what I mean? When you're already into it, it's fine. I'm sure I'll be like, oh, why didn't I do this before? So at the weekend, my friend Caroline came to visit from the Love to Sew podcast, and we went to Blakeney. And we bought these really cute mugs. Now we're Mugs twins. Hi Caroline! So these mugs are by Julia Davey. There's a little logo, and you can find the Julia Davies website. You can also see some of her other designs, which I had a little look at. And it's got a cute little lolly at the end. Just excuse the dregs of my tea, but you can see there's a cute little lolly in the bottom. How cute! And you keep wanting to keep drinking to see the lolly. So you can find, Caroline has got her own Etsy shop, so we're doing a bit of a collaboration. So Caroline's producing a Christmas box with a lovely bag with a sheep called Sybil on it, with some other lovely bits and bobs, and I've been involved and I've been dyeing up a little bit of yarn. So her updates this evening, the 12th of July at 7 PM British summertime, so you can pop over there and see the little kit that we've been making. She's kept a lot of the bits and bobs a secret, but you can see what the bag looks like. On the last episode of Love to Sew podcast, Caroline had Helen, who's Flora Honeypot, on Instagram as a guest, and it's absolutely hilarious, so you've got to go and watch it. I'll leave a link below down to that video. So there we are. So that's the last of my naughty confessions. We've got one more section to go. So lastly, I've got the Ask Me Anything section. So we haven't had this for a little while, but Ask Me Anything is basically a thread on the Ravelry group where you can ask me questions and I'll answer them on the podcast, or sometimes I'll answer them on the thread as well, depending on whether I think other people will be interested to listen or not. So my lovely friend Jo asked me whether I sew in my ends either before or after I block my work. So personally, I like to sew my ends in and then trim them before I block. And I know that's probably not a good idea because sometimes your ends can sort of then poke out once you've stretched out the material and blocked it a bit. But I like to do that because I feel that it's all neat before I've done the blocking stage. But I think ideally what you should probably do is weave in your ends and leave the end hanging, and then once you've blocked it, trim the end so that you know that it's nice and neat into your work. But it depends on what you're knitting, I think, as to some things you perhaps want to block them and then sew the ends in if it's a strange shape, if you're going to be pulling something out quite a lot like a lace piece. But I do tend to sew my ends in and then block because I get impatient and I just want to finish and sew all the ends in. It'd be interesting to see what you guys would think actually as well. So in the Ask Me Anything thread, if you go over there and say how you sew your ends in before or after you block, it'd be quite interesting to see what reasoning you've got as well. I know that my friend Lorraine's already described how she does hers, so it'd be interesting to see what you're doing. So thank you so much for joining me. Thanks for sticking right till the end. I hope you enjoyed listening to what I've been obsessing about in the last couple of weeks. I hope you've been having a lovely crafty time too. And I shall see you in a couple of weeks' time. Bye!